This conference will now be recorded.
There you go. All right. So if you remember on the first 2 days, obviously we went over the two objectives of the call. Make your time more valuable with you than anywhere else in the world, and then obviously get them to get the consumer involved to diagnose what they need. Um, so just to let you know, like in the sewer world, when we're selling sewers, well, that's what the camera's for, right? Camera gives them evidence. So we do have less of consumers not feeling they need a new sewer, when we show them evidence. On the heating and air side, we do have to show them a lot more evidence. I say a lot more. We just got to make sure they're involved. And then obviously day two was the psychology of the sale. And then so day three, you can see what we have here is understanding objections versus emotions. So this one uh, today is as you see as we go through this, you're going to see that consumers weren't trained, to actually get estimates from people. So there's a lot of emotions that are involved. But you as the camera tech or the comfort advisor, right? We have to be really good at understanding, was this truly an objection or emotion? So I'm going to show you how you do that. And then if you don't know how to do it, or if you're uncertain, I'm going to give you a foolproof route to take. Okay. Um,
Scott,
so let me
real
look.
quick,
Yes.
could I request that everybody mute their mics because we're getting background on this side.
Yep. So hopefully that'll go away. And if not, let me know, then I can mute them. All right. So let's look. I'm going to show you the objection wheel again. So every objection you get can be narrowed down into one of these five categories. And if you've known me for any time, you hear me always say everything is a math problem. And if you look at it that way, then all we got to do is just figure what part of the equation went wrong to know how to solve it. Okay? So I'm going to talk about two things here. I'm going to talk about comfort advisors first, and then I'm going to address sewer sales because their business on the sewer sales side is easier. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to close more because realistically, you typically close less on sewers as a percentage, but it's easier to figure out what to close, meaning it's easier to figure what objections you're having on that side. And I'll explain why. So let's go through Comfort Advisor first. So most companies, probably including both companies on this call, well they go out as a comfort advisor and they quote these different packages of units. So meaning you'll have a 14, a 16, a 18, a 20 series. And you heard me say the other day that the manufacturer has brainwashed us that that's the best thing to do. And I'm going to tell you it's not. Because what happens is when we create these packages of and good, better, best, right? Well, we're the guinea pig to test their products. And you heard me say the other day that when we sell the new fancy widget that comes out, and they give us these spiffs, right, to go on trips or whatever incentives. Well, what we're doing as a company is guinea pigging that product, even though it was tested in the factory. It really wasn't tested in the real world. So our warranties go up, our install labor goes through the roof because we're trying to figure these products out. Well, so not only that, our objections change. So when you quote packages of units only, so let's say, and again, let's say I went to a shop, that quoted 4 or 5 different level of heating and air systems from say 13 to 20 series. It really doesn't matter the series. All right. Well, we get certain objections. So let me show you what they look like. When we call all the consumers back that do not buy from you, when you're quoting that style, meaning those different level of packages, it looks like this. So the objections we get, right? And I showed you this the other day. First, we have to sell ourselves. We have to make sure we sell the company or not have no issues with the company. We got to then write up the options, okay, or present the option. we got to present a price, and we got to get them to agree to time. Okay? Well, you remember me saying the other day that 40% of people don't buy from us when we quote this way because they don't feel what we've quoted is the best thing for them. Could be, could be the size, could be brand, but there's definitely some issues there. Okay? And now I've showed you, well, how do we overcome this, right? Well, we overcome it by, first of all, we get the consumer. So objective number 2, right? When we get the consumer to actually build what we're quoting. So when you have a great survey, that survey is the menu that tells the consumer, that lets the consumer design their own product. When you do that, the solution piece of your objection, it doesn't go away, but it drops drastically. Okay? And that's because, if it's their own idea, they follow it. So we're just recapping that. Now, the next thing is, well, let me show you here. My clicker ain't working. If you look, price 37% of the time that consumers, when you're quoting just units, meaning you're quoting these packages, and you got from a 13 to a 20 seer, well, what happens is 37% of the time they don't buy is price. Well, when we learn to create this great survey, we learn to get them to want all these little extra products, well, something magical happens here. And what happens is, you heard me say that if you go to buy a car, and this car, you might not have wanted the car, but once they got there, and you're like, holy crap, this is expensive. But once they went through it and you saw it had leather seats, it's 4-wheel drive, and had all this fancy widgets and Bluetooth, and well, now the price wasn't as big of a concern. So when you have a great survey that ties all these accessories in, and those accessories fix a problem they have in their life, and just remember this, the problem has to make it back. There's in sales, right? There's 12 motivators when people buy something. Okay, the only 2 you have to worry about in the in-home service business, and I say that, you can worry about all of them, but you heard me say that if 60%, at least 60% of people don't answer the same way, I'm not worried about it. So I will tell you this, 2 motivators you need to worry about in this business is money and family. So now when you can get these, somebody's talking, needs to be muted. Somebody was talking, needs to be muted. So the two motivators, that if you can get them related back to money and family. So how do these accessories change my family's life, or how do these accessories either save me money or make me money, whichever way you want to look at it? Well, something magical happens here. So if you again look, you're at 37% of people don't buy because of price when you're solely quoting systems, okay, meaning units. Well, 18% of people didn't buy for right time. We already went through this. 3% company, and 2% because of the person. Well, when you learn to truly, listen, you get their active listening, right? You teach them through a non-condescending way, and you also learn to get a survey that builds all these accessories in. Well, here's what happens. Okay. Price, believe it or not, now drops from 37% of the reason they don't buy it to 17. And that's because they're getting a lot more value. Okay, so this is, I can't tell you, express the importance of, I get people say all the time, well, how do you overcome when you're second in the door and they got a quote of 6,000 and you're 12,000? Well, if you're quoting a box and they're quoting a box, that's hard to overcome. There's only so much value they're going to give to the company and you. You have to learn to get these accessories built in. And that's why I spend so much time on the heat and air side, building the price books and creating these so that, you can have closes built in. Now let's talk about sewers. Sewer sales is a little different. Only 22% of the time that we called people back that they did not buy because they didn't feel what was presented they needed, right? The solution. And you see in HVAC, it was 40% they didn't buy because they didn't feel it was the right product, brand, or whatever. Well, in the sewers, it's only 22%. So it's not as big of a hurdle. Now, we'll tell you this, time is a bigger objection in sewers than it is in the heat and air world. Because here's the problem in the sewer world. They can see the evidence, right? They see a camera, they see the roofs, they see the issues, but they're now going, okay, so I need a new sewer. It's lasted me this long before, right? So I'll just gamble and hope it'll last long again. So time is goes up, and price objection goes way up. So if you saw that it was 37% of the on heat and air, 37% didn't buy because of price. Well, in the sewer, it's 55% there. So between time and price, you're at 77% of the reason that we don't close sewers. So when you understand that's the math problem we got to fix, we have to make sure when we present sewers, we have to either build a model that teaches you how to either add a lot of value, extra value, or we have to do in the sewer world, we have to do more price conditioning than you would in the heat and air world. Okay. And so I'm not going to tell you. So if I design your price book for the HVAC world, I'm going to show you how to present it. And believe it or not, you don't have to price condition, because I'm going to show you how to keep the customer's mind psychologically at neutral. And then if you do that, there's no emotions involved, so therefore you don't have to price condition. In the sewer world, you want to get really good, you got to be a master of a price conditioner, and you got to have either a price, I won't say a price book, but your options have to be designed in a way that works there. So Dick and Matt, we will work behind the scenes on creating those two, because these are two different beasts. And the reason they're two different beasts is because their objections are different. So if our, in the heat and air world, like if you see here, if you design your price book the way I want, well, look, now price is only concerned 17% of the time, and solution goes way down. So now the biggest problem you'll have is this the right time to move forward? And I'm going to show you urgency trumps time. So when I show you how to create instant urgency in the heat and air world, you'll trump time. Your closure rate goes through the roof if you do the price book the way I want you to do. Now in the sewer world, again, our biggest objection is going to be price. Our second biggest is time. And they're, together, those add up to 77% of the reasons why they don't buy from us. So our price structure there is totally different than it's going to be in HVAC. And it's specifically done with intent. Okay? All right, so let's move forward. All right, so I'm going to show you something here. In my sales career, I've written so many closes. Not only that, I've learned a lot of closes, and I'm talking about closes, things you say today to get this, the consumer to move forward. And I'll tell you, I've tried to teach, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of people all these closes, and I've failed miserably. You heard me show you, I've only had 2 people that have gotten to stage 4 in sales. And so what I've decided to do was never teach all these closes again, because some of them you might only need, of 1 or 2% of the time. You're going to see some you're going to need 70% of the time. So those we're going to make sure we teach. The ones that are pretty much irrelevant, or like unicorns, you only need, every now and then, I'm going to go over those as needed. So when we start to rip apart your sales the last 2 days, if a close pops up that we need, I'm going to go over it with you. If it doesn't, I'm not going to. Okay? So let me just show you a few examples of these closes, because there's too many closes to learn. So choice assumption close. This by far one of the strongest closes you can use. I can teach you this on the sewer. I won't teach it to you on Comfort Advisors because we don't need it. Okay? Concession close. Everybody on this call will have to learn this close. If they're ever going to master this business, they have to. This is a close that you will use from 60 to 80% of your time. You have to master this close. And I say master, if you can make it to stage 4 on this close, you're going to be write your own paycheck. If you can only make it stage 3, you'll make good money, right? But we will definitely go over this one. Okay. 6-step process close. We will not go over this. Just imagine close. We will go through these. These are a series of walkthrough closes. We will touch on those. Time commitment close. We may go over this if somebody needs it. And this normally does come up, maybe 5 to 10% of the time when I'm doing these. So if we need to go over it, we will. One-legged close. So there's this thing going out there, this consensus that people won't buy without speaking to your spouse. And I'm going to tell you, 80% of people will buy without speaking to their spouse. And they're so much so that I wrote a close for it. Okay. We probably won't go over this. It just depends if it comes up. We might not. Suggestion close, we might touch on that. If I could, you would you? So I'm just going to show you a few of closes here. High authority, we'll definitely go over this one. It's these two work hand in hand, the concession and the high authority. You'll use these 60 to 80% of the time. Okay, these will teach you how to overcome. Like in sewers, you're going to use this probably 80% of the time. In HVAC, you might have to use it 60% of the time. These two, these create urgency, and we both know if you're like in the sewer world, right? If we're totally stopped up and we can't get it open, well, they have to do something. That urgency now took over. In heat and air world, if it's 99 degrees in their house, urgency takes over. But if there's no urgency there, you have to be able to create it. And these are two tools that we use to create urgency. Okay. Let's see. Walk through, close, whatever. Takeaway, close. We might use that. We might not. Phone close. We might come across that when it happens. Red light, green light. This one probably only comes up 2% of the time, but just to show you, this would be one person. Both spouses are there. One gives you the red light, right? It says no. One says yes. I can tell you word for word what will overcome that 100% of the time, as long as the husband and wife love each other. If they don't love each other, it's not going to work. This is based on if they have a strong marriage, I can teach you exactly what to overcome that situation. I will tell you this. This is the most uncomfortable close you'll ever do. And that's the reason a lot of people don't do it, because people are afraid of confrontation. Majority are. Okay, so this gives you a few ideas of the closes. So for me to teach you all these closes, we could spend years and years and years, and you're still not going to master it. So what I've decided to do is just teach you the process of how to close the call, right? And the process, what people go through. And then we'll address these closes as they pop up. Okay, so let's look forward. Here's the way a perfect call goes. You got this hallway with all these doors, and these doors are objections. Well, the last objection you get is price. You're going to hear me tell you this. Price is the easiest objection to overcome when it's the truth. It's the hardest objection to overcome when it's not the truth. Meaning if they don't feel they need it, and you could cut the price in half and it doesn't matter, they're not going to move forward with it. So we have to understand, how do we close these other doors before we get to price? Because when we're at price, we want that to be the only objection left. And when it is, we're going to teach you how to make the sale. If it's not the only objection left, well, you got a lot of work to figure out. So we want to go down this hallway, and we want to look at some of these objections. So talk with spouse, you hear it all the time, right? Is this the best product for me? And this could be, in the sewer world, if we quote too many options, if we quote a spot repair or a replacement, a pipe burst, a reline, well, shit, we've now done a lot of confusion in there. Same on heating and air. If we just quote 5 or 6 different products, we can create our own objections. They want to think about it. This one kills me. So we got to understand how to overcome it. Okay, getting other quotes. Now I'm going to give you an example. Your company can come up with things that make your job easier. Doesn't mean I'm not recommending you do this, but I am saying your company can come up with ways to close these doors. Let me give you a few examples here. Okay, because we want to learn to close these doors. And again, we get down to price, and that's the only one. So let me show you. If your company, right, like Dick, do you have a 100% money back guarantee? You're muted. Hello, Dick.
Yep. Yeah, we do.
Okay, so let me ask you this: does it have a time frame? Is it 1 year? Is it 5 years? Is it eternity?
It's 1 year.
1 year. Okay, cool. So I'm going to show you how to present it right now. I'm going to do this very quickly. So most people say, well, we got a 100% money back guarantee, and they just say that. Well, what the hell does that even mean? Because everybody says that, right? So here's, if I have a 100% money back guarantee, I'm going to show you, here's how I present it. So Dick, let's say you put up in your driveway and you got an F Ford 150, and it's brand new, or it looks new, right?
Right.
When I get here, I'm going to say, now, Dick, we have a 100% money back guarantee. Now, you might say, well, what is that? So let me give you an example. Now, you can't see me because, I'm doing PowerPoint, but I'm holding both hands up like I'm a waiter, right? I got both hands up like I got two server trays in each hand. So I'm going to say, Dick, so imagine you got this one company, right, that it's a Ford dealership that lets you buy that Ford F-150 that's in your driveway. And by law, they have what's called a 3-day right of rescission. I mean, you can drive that car around for 3 days, and at the end of the third day, before that day is over, you can take it back and they'll give your money back. Well, what do you think happens, Dick, if you're unhappy with it 2 weeks later? What do you think happens? Yep, you're exactly right. You can't take it back, right? You're stuck with it. So,
Right.
so imagine you have this other dealership that lets you drive around for 11 months and 29 days. And in the event, if you're unhappy on that 11-month and 29th day, you could take it back and they'll give your money back. If that was the case, Dick, which dealer would you purchase from? And you would say, obviously, the second one. And when they do, you go, that's exactly right. Smart decision. And not only that, let me tell you, we are that second dealership. So Dick, at our business, right, our owner of our company, she's so smart that she says, look, the 3-day right of rescission is not good. And if you're selling heating and air, here's the way you do it. If you're selling sewers, you do it, similar. But I'll show you both real quick. So you said, so she's smart that she understands the 3-day right of rescission is not good for consumers in the heat and air world. Because if your system gets put in the middle of summer, you could see that you're 100% happy in 3 days probably. Well, the problem is you now got 6 months later, you got heat pops up. Well, what if you're unhappy with the heat? Well, unfortunately, you're out of that 3-day right of rescission and you're now stuck with it. And so again, our owner's so smart that she said, look, that's not enough time to understand if we're going to be happy with it. So that's what she does is she now gives you 11 months and 29 days to test out the product. If you're not 100% happy, you call and let us know, and we'll make you happy. And if not, we'll give your money back. So you see the way I explain it. So I get Dick to pick me, right? I got him to pick my dealership, even before he knew it was me. And then I said, well, that's what type of company we are. And on the sewer world, you just do the same thing. You go, for example, when we put all this work in, we're going to be tearing up the yard. It's going to have problems settle. Well, and our owner's so smart that, that in the event if the yard settles and there's an issue, you're not going to notice it in 3 days. Okay, you're going to notice it 11 months later. So she's going to give you 11 months, 29 days. In the event if you're unhappy with this, it's not doing what we said we're going to do, we'll just give you 100% of your money back, or we'll make you happy. So you see, your company can have things that overcome think about it. So if they say they want to think about it, what the hell is there to think about? I'm giving you 11 months and 29 days to think about it. So you can come up with guarantees that will overcome these. I'm going to show you a few more. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on them because I'm not recommending them. There's the lowest price guarantee. This works extremely well. It's designed for if you're first in the door, you close it and you give them 2 more weeks to shop it after you've already done the work. The problem with this closes, it creates an administrative nightmare in the office. So I'm not recommending it. Okay. Well, they want to talk with a spouse. Well, you got a risk reversal clause that will knock this one out, and I'll show you how to do that. We're not going to spend time on it here. And then obviously if you give multiple options, if you get a good survey, or in the sewer world, if we slim down our options and we use the word only a bunch when we go to, there's ways that we can overcome these, okay? So this is the way the perfect call goes, is we overcome them all before we get there, and then we're down to price. But now here's what happens. Let's talk about, all right, so even if we got a great price book, or we're doing the choice assumption close and we're doing great options on sewer, well, we're still going to have some issues. We're going to have these things pop up. So if you look, when you present a price to the consumer, and if he or she says something, we have to determine, is this an emotional response? Is it they're telling me little white fib? Okay, or is it truly an objection? Because if it's truly an objection, objections are good. Meaning that people give you objections when they're actually feeling the pain of having to purchase. So to give an example, if you present something to a consumer today and it's $20,000, and if you give them that price and they go, okay, thanks, you can see there's no emotional attachment. Well, you're missing something because they don't even feel they need it, and I say that if you're first in the door and you give them that and there's no emotional response whatsoever, you've missed something, because if they felt they need it, then they're going to go, oh, God, that hurts, that pain I'm going through, right? And they're going to show you. So if they go, holy crap, are you kidding me? $20,000? That's a great sign. That's a buy-in sign. The way I see that, when they freak out about price, that's just like them going, hey, I've got to pay with a check, right? Or I got to pay with a credit card. That's what they're doing. They're showing you that they have an emotional attachment to this. Okay, so let's go through these. I want to show you, you have to be a master to determine which one of these are popping up. Because if not, then you're actually going to have some issues. So let's look at these here. I want to think about it. Okay, so ask yourself, and somebody can respond if they want, is this an emotional response? Is this a lie, or is this an objection? Who can tell me what they think that is the majority of the time? Anybody? Want to think about it?
That's an emotional response.
Yep.
Emotional response. All right, so who said that, by the way?
Scott.
Scott, cool. So this is I will tell you, this is an emotional response 80+% of the time. Okay, so the worst thing you can do to an emotional response is treat it as an objection. Because if I treat this as an objection, I now create that objection. So if somebody said, I want to think about it, and you now know this is an emotional response, and well, to give an example, so Scott, I'll ask you since you spoke up. So did you go to high school?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. All right, and in school, did your teacher say, hey, Scott, one day somebody's going to give you a price, and when they do, I want you to tell them you want to think about it? Were you taught that in school?
No.
Okay, so that's how you're going to determine, is this truly an emotional response? When somebody says something, if you don't think they were taught that somewhere, then it's probably an emotional response. Now, some people, this will be a learned behavior because, maybe they felt like they got burned, on something. And so now they just decided they're going to wait. So, yeah, but that is a very small percentage of people. So if somebody says at this point, if they go, hey, I want to think about it, the worst thing you can do is start going, well, what do you want to think about? And the best salespeople in the world, they do not respond to customers literally. Because I will tell you this, 99.9% of people respond literally. You have to train yourself to not do what comes natural. So if I ask you, well, what is your name? And you said Scott, that shows you that's what we do. We respond literally. So, the best salespeople, if I said, what's your name? They could say, well, I'm curious to what you would want to use it for. They're going to answer things differently. So it's like in the plumbing world, if they say, well, hey, is this something you can do tomorrow? Well, most people would say yes. what I'm telling you, you need to train yourself not to say yes. You need to train yourself, well, if we could, is that something we can get it taken care of for you? You see, I'm turning around and answering the question with a question. So here, if I said I want to think about it, you do not say, what do you need to think about? Okay, so if we look at this one, getting other quotes. Now, I will tell you, this is an emotional response probably 50% of the time. Half the time it's not. Just because maybe they normally get quotes. And if you remember me telling you, if they normally do something, you gotta understand that so you can learn to break that habit. Okay, so let's look at a few more of these. All right, let's see here. Need to talk with spouse. Okay, now this initially is not a learned behavior. This is something you're not taught. But one day you might have bought something and you got yelled at by your spouse, so now you're taught. Okay, so this one, I would say probably 70% of the time is an emotional response, 30% of the time is true. Now, and if you look, you've heard this before. It says people would actually rather they would rather actually take a beating than ask for permission. So when the value is truly there, your spouse will not only purchase something, but they'll brag to the other spouse what they purchased. If the value's not there, well, like way more than it's supposed to be, they're not going to pull the trigger. Okay, so not going to do anything. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, when them not doing anything is doing something. And let's do one more. This is my favorite one here. And I'll tell you a quick story on this one. So, whoa, I cannot make the decision today. So I was teaching this class, and it was actually at a member's shop, and this was, I don't know, 2010 maybe to 11. And this guy's name was Scott Davis. He was in the room, and he goes, "You're telling me when somebody says, they need to speak to the wife, they don't mean it?" And I said, "Yep, guarantee it." I said 70% of the time. Because I don't believe that. I said, well, I don't care what you believe. I'm here to make you better, so I don't care if you believe it or not. And he goes, okay. Well, I would never I would never make a decision on a product without speaking to my wife. And I said, all right, so let me ask you this. Is there a dollar amount that you would not spend over? He goes, yeah. I said, all right, well, what would that be? He goes, I don't know. I said, well, would you spend $1,000? He goes, yeah. I said, all right, 2,000? He goes, maybe, depending on what it was. I said, what about 3,000? He goes, yeah, that's the limit. I would never spend $3,000 without speaking to my wife. I said, okay, thanks. And then I looked down at the end of the table. There was this guy named John at the far end. I said, John, you said you just bought a new motorcycle, didn't you? He said, yep. I said, cool. What'd you pay for that? He goes, well, it's worth 21,000, but I paid 18. I said, no, let me tell you, it's worth what you pay. That's what sets the value. Quit trying to justify your decision. I said, I appreciate that, but so it's worth 18. And he goes, okay, it's 18. And I looked down at Scott and I said, Scott, so if I was somehow able to get John to give you his motorcycle that he just paid 18 for 4,000, would you do that without speaking to your wife? He goes, well, hell yeah. I said, well, wait a minute. You just told me you'd never buy anything above 3,000 without speaking. He goes, Scott, it's worth 18. I said, oh, so what you're telling me is when value way supersedes price, you'll make the decision and take the bitching later. He goes, I got you. He goes, okay, but you'll never. He goes, if somebody tells you they can't make the decision today, he goes, that means they're not going to make it. I said, all right, so I'm going to do a ride along with you. So I went and did a ride along with him. And we got there. Now, we pulled up, just to let you know, we pulled up in the yard, and there was a for sale sign in the yard. And he goes, oh, I hate this. And I said, wow, what does that mean? He goes, it means they're not buying anything. I said, no, sir, it means they're buying 100% of everything, meaning everything we offer, they will buy. And he goes, well, I never had that luck. I said, because you're trying to sell gain and not pain. This is 100% pain purchase, meaning so I tell this story about my father-in-law. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I do on the call. I tell it to the consumer. I go in, and now I write up these two options. So like the sewer world, I'm going to show you how to present choice assumption close. So that's the close I used. And I said, so basically I said, well, we know you're going to go with, now, oh, I'm sorry, we were there because they needed a condenser. But once I went in the crawl space, they also needed they had some water. They needed a sump pump put in, and a little bit of gravel put back in these drain ditches. And so I presented option one was the condenser with the pump for $6,500 and change. Option two was the pump, the condenser and the pump for $88,000 basically and change. So there was the same option. So there's no deciding, is this the right thing for me? The only difference was the warranties. One had a 5-year, one had a 10-year warranty. So when I sat down with him, I said, so obviously we know you're at least going to go with option number one. That's what you had us out here for. That's the to replace the condenser outside, and the pump comes with a 5-year warranty. Now option number two is exactly the same option, but it does have an additional 5-year warranty. So since we know you're going with option number one, at least option number one, I have to ask you one question. Is it worth the extra $1,500 to get the extra 5-year security? This man throws his hands in the air and says, whoa, I cannot make the decision today. So who wants to take a stab at that? What do we say to that? Who wants to chime up and doesn't mind saying it? So again, he says, whoa, I cannot make the decision today. Throws his hands in the air. Who wants to take a stab at it? Anybody? Any takers? All right, well then I will just tell you what I said. So we know that's an emotional response. The worst thing you can do is say, well, when are you going to make the decision? Because now you just created that objection. Okay, so all I said was, he goes, whoa, I cannot make the decision today. I said, well, I can understand that because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? And obviously he answered yes, because most people will answer you literally. So again, I said, I can understand that because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? He says, yeah. I said, just suppose you made the decision today. Is tomorrow still a good time to put this in for you? So you see, just suppose that's a walkthrough close. I mean, he cannot answer the question of is tomorrow still a good time to do this unless he walks through him making the decision. And so you got to learn to respond to emotional responses this way. So I can understand that because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? Just suppose you did make the decision today. Is tomorrow still a good time to put this in? He looks at his wife and he goes, honey, are you going to be here tomorrow? And she said, yeah. She goes, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to tell you, she's not going anywhere. She didn't get off the couch the whole time I was there. So, and I said, great. Now that we know we're putting it in tomorrow, is it worth the extra $1,500 to get the extra 5-year security? He goes, Scott, why would I do that? Because, I'm moving. I don't get a benefit from it. I said, all right, well, it sounds like to me we're going with the 5-year. Initial here, we'll get you taken care of. So within 15 to 20 seconds of a man throwing his hands in the air, says he's not going to make the decision today, pulls a trigger on a $6,500 agreement. Now, I will tell you, if I would have said, when are you going to make the decision? That would have not have been the same result. So when you look at these emotional responses, we have to learn how to respond to them to where we don't create our own objections. Here's the way I show you an emotional response is. Like, I do not like spiders. Freaking hate spiders. They're ugly. They just freak me out. The bigger they are, the more freaky they are. So if I got up in the middle of the night to go to use the restroom and I walked into the bathroom, flipped the light on, if I saw a large spider in the floor, right, I would go, ah, and I'd scream and probably go a spider. But once that emotion comes out once, it doesn't happen again. So after I look at that spider once, I don't look up, look back down at it again and go, ah, a spider. So once the emotion pops up once, we learn how to acknowledge, empathize, and bypass it, it won't come up again. But if it does in the sales world, well, guess what? That's now an objection. And objections are good. But if you treat an emotional response like an objection, you create your own objections that are false. And then what happens, if I say, well, when are you going to make the decision? And he goes, I will make it in 2 days. And then now you start trying to overcome that objection when it's really not one. You'll start to get all these little white lies will start to come out. Everybody on this call has had this happen to them. They say, well, I can't make a decision without talking to my wife. and you say, well, can you get her on the phone? It's the worst thing to say. Unless you, now if it's a true objection, it's not. But if it's emotional response, here's what he's going to say. And everybody has, everybody has had somebody say this to them. And the more recent, the better. So if they say, well, I got to speak to my wife, husband, or whatever, and you say, can we get them on the phone? And then you'll know that it was an emotional response when they say this. Oh, no, I can't get him. He's the busiest librarian in the world. He can never be bothered. They'll say something so stupid that doesn't make sense. And you're like, what? The last training call I did on this, it was so funny when we started ripping apart these invoices. He had a guy in front of him and said, well, he said he can't. Oh, he when he speak to his wife, and I asked him if he could get her on the phone, and he goes, Scott, and sure enough, she said she can never call her husband at work ever. I said, listen how stupid that is. If she cut off her finger, she's calling her husband. And he goes, but here's the funny part. I stepped outside for a minute. I said, so now you've made 2 mistakes on your call. And he goes, when I stepped back in, she was on the phone with her husband. They told me no. What went wrong? I said, well, everything went wrong, But my point is we got to understand emotional responses. We got to understand lies and objections because you handle all 3 differently. Now, is there anybody on this call that is a psychic? And I'm assuming there's not. And you're going to hear me say there's no such thing as psychics. If so, Friend Psychic Network would have known they were going out of business. Right? So if you're not a psychic and you can't tell if this is or if you're not a lie detector, a human lie detector, and you can't tell if this is an emotional response, an objection, or a lie, then the safest thing to do is treat 100% of everything that comes out of their mouth once the prices were given. If they don't tell you yes, just treat it as an emotional response. So here's how you do it. You might want to make a note of these. It's pretty simple, but this is how you do it. You acknowledge whatever they say. So all you're going to do is say, I can understand that. It's as simple as that. You can use this on every one of them. Okay? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to tell them you'd feel the same way if you were in their shoes. You're going to now empathize with this emotional response. So let's just say they got to speak to their husband. You're going to say, well, I can understand that. I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes. So they want to think about it. I can understand that. I'd feel the same way if I were in the shoes. And you train yourself to do this. Now, if they throw it out, you gave a price and they say something, you just throw this out. It's that simple. And you learn to do it without even thinking about it. You better believe I don't have to think about it. They tell me, oh, my dad's, going to give me the money. I don't care what they say. You got to learn to acknowledge and empathize and bypass it. Now, what's the bypass? The way the bypass works is you can just suppose or you just walk them through whatever the crap they told you. Okay? So remember him saying, whoa, I can't make the decision today. I said, well, I can understand that. I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes. Now, I did ask a question after that just to keep him in control. And that's where I said, because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? Yeah. Just suppose, you made the decision today. How often does this, I can't tell you how many times this comes up. They say, I got to speak to my wife or husband. You say, well, I can understand that. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes. Because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? Yeah. Just suppose you spoke to your wife and she says it's totally your decision. Which one are you leaning toward? Which one do you think you'd go with? I can't tell you how many people have done that and they go, well, I'd go with this one. And I've had a lot say this. Well, I'd go with this one, but there's no way my wife would say that. That's why I need to call her. Well, if that's the case, we'll call her. Now it's a true objection. They'll actually get her on the phone. And then once you get her on the phone, there's the phone close. It teaches you how to close the sale on the phone. The problem is if you just said, well, can you get her on the phone? And it's not an objection, then you're going to get, well, I can't get her. She's a busy librarian. Okay, so this is what you have to do is you have to learn how to acknowledge and empathize and bypass, before we learn how to overcome objections, because majority of these are emotional responses. And I'm telling you, majority of them are. And then if they freaked out when they saw the spider, that's okay. You show it to them again, and guess what? If they don't freak out again, which they probably won't, well, now it's an objection. Okay, and if you actually just bypass it and it don't come back up, well, then obviously it was just an emotional response, and you're done. So again, let me walk you through a few of these. I want you. This is something Dick and Steve, my guys would do this. We would do training. Now I know you're social distancing, right? But we'd do training. Like I would sit on the opposite page. Steve, are you there? We can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I stepped away for about half an hour, but I'm back now.
I appreciate that. I know it's all right. So here's what I want you to do. I want you just to repeat after me, okay?
Yep.
So let's say the consumer, right, has the objection and says, I don't make decisions in the first day. Let's say they tell you that, okay? I just want you to say this. Are you ready? Let's go. I can understand that.
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 So, Steve, at my company, me and you will do this for probably 10 times each. Yeah, I say it, you say it. I say it, you say it. Now, after the 10th time, here's what I do. I can understand that. I would feel the same way if I were in your shoes. Now, go ahead and repeat all that.
I can understand that. I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes.
Now, we repeat that 10 times. Once you feel good that you can say that every time, then I'll throw in a grabber and I'll say, I can understand that. I'd feel the same way if I were in your shoes, because you do want to make the right decision, don't you? And then you and I will do that 10 times until you feel so comfortable with those 3 sentences. You got that down. And then we walk through or bypass the close. It says bypass. I don't know why I initially named it bypass. I should have named it walkthrough, because that's what the close is here. You're walking them through making that decision. And here's the funny part. If it's an emotional response, it don't even have to make sense. I've had this happen. I can't do anything without talking to my dad. And I'll just say, I can understand it. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes, because you'll make the right decision, don't you? And they go, yeah. And I can't remember that she just said she wants to speak to her dad. And I'll go, well, just suppose you made the decision. Which one do you think you'd go with? And they go, oh, I go with this one. So the walkthrough don't even have to make sense, because now it would have to make sense if this was an objection, but since it's an emotional response, it don't have to even make sense. So that's how I train my guys and gals to do it, and we just do that. Before you know it, if I walk down the hallway and I run into a sewer salesperson in the hallway, and that's just say, hey Scott, you have a good weekend? I said, I sure did. I got to speak to my wife. They better be able to ramble this crap off. And in the middle of a hallway, I'll just say, yep, got to speak to my wife. They go, I can understand that. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes. Just suppose you spoke to your wife. She says, it's totally your decision. Which one do you think you move forward with? So you see, I don't have to think about that. That is stage 4. You got to do your damnedest to get to stage 4 here, because timing is so essential. Now, if it comes back up and he goes, well, I would want to go this route, but I still got to speak to my wife. Now you can say, get her on the phone, and they'll actually get her. But then we got to learn the phone close, because there's nothing worse than getting them on the phone, not knowing the phone close, and it goes like this. Hey, honey, I got a guy out here. He quoted me a price to replace the sewer for $20,000. Okay, she says we're going to get her estimates. Click. Everybody on this call has had that happen to them. That's because we missed all the steps. There's truly steps to the phone close. Okay? All right, so you go, and then obviously once you learn to acknowledge, empathize, and bypass, you go back to your original close. So this is what I wanted to cover today, to understand emotional responses, objections, right? A little white fibs, and I wanted so we're going to open it up. So who has questions about this? And we're just going to open up and spend the last 10 minutes talking about it and see who's got questions or whatever. So, Matt, do you have any questions about it whatsoever?
No, I don't. I was hoping maybe to go through another example of acknowledge, empathize, and bypass.
Okay. I can give you more, but the one on the screen pretty much is all you need. And I say that.
Yeah.
You can say, you can say, I can understand that. I can appreciate how you feel that way, right? There's also, if you know what feel, felt, found, some people would use those to overcome. If you know what they are, some people will use those to overcome emotional responses. I don't prefer feel, felt, found. I don't mind it and when it's a true objection. So let's say a customer goes, "Whoa, God, this is a lot of money." Okay, so I'm going to say, "Well, I can understand how you feel that way. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes." Now, when I bypass it, I'm not going to say, "Just suppose you thought it wasn't a lot of money." I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight to, right back to my original close. Now, feel, felt, found, if you're familiar with it, you would say, "Well, I can understand how you'd feel that way." A lot of customers have felt that way in the past. What they found out is when they went ahead and moved forward with the project, it wasn't as bad as they thought. So which one do you think you'd be leaning toward? That would be an example of feel, felt, found. Now, I'm going to tell you, in order to make it to level 4, just pick one and just use it on every call. Your consumer is not going to go, "Wait a minute, you were here 6 months ago and you used that same verbiage." That is not going to come up.
Okay.
So who else has a question about this? Maybe wants to talk about where they've seen it come up, or who wants to practice it?
Scott, it's Derek with the Comfort Authority.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man. So at the very end, if you say, just suppose you do get a hold of your wife, and which option would you go with? And he says, I don't know, option 2. Go paperwork.
Okay, some of that broke up. So if it was a wife, I said, "I can understand how you feel that way. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes." Just suppose you spoke to your wife and now here's again, you want to walk them through it. Just suppose you spoke to your wife and she says it's totally your decision. Which one do you think you would want to go with? Okay. Now, what did you say after that? I didn't hear what you said.
If he said like option 2, would you just go from there and just say, great, we'll get started with the paperwork?
Yeah. If he says option 2, he says, "Well, I'd go with option 2." Say, "Great, let's go ahead and get paperwork taken care of." Now, me personally, I'm presenting on paperwork.
Right.
I present, and so at this point, if he says that, I say, "Cool, go ahead and initial here that this is the one you don't want," and I scratch through it. I said, "Initial here you don't want it, and initial here this is the one we'll be getting put in for you or taken care of for you." And if he goes, "No, I really got to speak to my wife," well, now that's an objection, and that's okay. So at this point, you say, "Great, well, let's go ahead and give her a call." And then there's the phone close, and he'll call her. But you better know the phone close, or if not, he's just going to say, "Hey, dude's out here. Is this much?" And you've lost it. He just, in all the value you created, he lost in 20 seconds.
Right.
Okay. But the worst thing you can do is they go, "Well, I want to talk to my wife." You go, "Okay." You say, "Hey, I want to speak to my wife," and they go, "Well, get her on the phone." I know somebody's at the front door. I got every alarm going off here. All right. Any other questions we got? Who else has a question about this?
I don't have a question as much as an observation. When I heard you going over, when we were kind of going back over I understand that, repeating back and forth. What I got was that it's more in how you're being, and I also hear that in your voice too. The empathy, I don't think, can be understated, because when you actually get what they're dealing with, and that they're kind of in over their head in the moment with this decision that nobody likes to make decisions, like, shit, what do I do? If you can bring that calm back down by empathy and helping them walk through it, that can result in a sale for you, because they're going to buy. It just might be from somebody else if you aren't able to get through that with them.
So good observation. Let's address this real quick. We haven't touched on it because y'all, I mean, like, whoever's the sales manager at locations, like Matt and Steve, y'all really got to focus when you go back, and you got to recreate, train to get all this rolled out, because you better believe I already know what personality they are at this point. So if they're a white, guess what I can do? Right? I'm going to say, "I can understand that. I feel the same way if I were you. Just suppose you spoke to your wife. She says it's totally your decision." Right? I would not ask a white, "Which one do you want to go with?" I would say, "This is the one you would choose." And I'm going to, because whites have to be told, If you're a yellow, I mean, so we're going to tie in. I say I've only got 8 hours with you, or whatever it is, 6 hours with you total. So y'all have to, or is it, I don't know what it is, but regardless, y'all have to now, take this information back and start training it. But yeah, so to that point, you do, and I'm going fast with y'all, but when I'm in the home, I'm not saying it this fast, right? I'm gonna say, well, I can understand that. I feel the same way if I'm in your shoes. I even say this sometimes. I go, look, I know you didn't wake up. Let's say it's a single person, they're not married. I'm gonna say, I know you didn't wake up and go, yay, I get to buy a new heat and air system today. So I know that didn't happen, but obviously you're forced with it. So at this point, which one do you think you want to go with? So I would be acknowledged, I empathize, and I might bypass it a little bit differently. The bypass don't even have to make sense on emotional response. And so I trained myself to hear no matter what they said out of their mouth first. I trained myself to hear, and you might think this is weird, but that's okay, the words potato salad. And I've had people go, what the hell do you mean by that? Because it doesn't make sense. If I gave a consumer a price, and they said the word potato salad, that don't make sense, does it? And everybody said, well, no, it doesn't. Well, good. Your bypass don't have to make sense. Don't focus so much on that they say they got to speak to their wife, because if it's emotional response, they don't have to speak to her. It's just like they said, potato salad. Your response don't even have to make sense, but you do got to acknowledge, you got to empathize, and you got to get past that remark, whatever it was. And then you got to go right back to your close, and you better know your personality so you know how to close them. All right, we got about 2 minutes left, and I got to jump off here. So any other questions? Somebody that's come across this? I mean, what other questions do we have at all? Okay.
I
If
have
no more, go ahead.
that.
Yep.
The last one, the last example that you gave where you were talking about, hey, when you woke up and you throw your hands in the air, would that be something you'd use more with a yellow? Because you're trying, I mean, it's more humorous or not. I mean, you could make that humorous, I guess.
And I would probably use that more with the blue, just because blues truly love people. Blues are truly empathetic. And so, and I say that you can use them with all, but you're basically letting them know, look, you're human, I'm human. It sucks we're in this situation. You were dealt the cards. I'm here to fix it and help fix it. And I'm not going to use it all the time, but my point is, it doesn't even have to really make sense to bypass. If it's true, now it does have to make sense. This is where it's different. It would have to make sense if that's an objection. I mean, you couldn't say, they go, well, I got to speak to my husband. If that was 100% true, you couldn't just go, okay, well, do you like porridge? Because that wouldn't make sense. But if it was not if it was truly an emotional response, you can say whatever the hell you want to say. Right? But you got to learn just to get past whatever they said and then go for the close again. So here's what I want y'all to do. I want y'all to, Matt and Steve, I want y'all to go away from this and realizing this is a piece we got to train. So I showed you how we train, and we just sit across from each other and we just do one sentence at a time, one sentence at a time. And then once we get the steps down, we will throw some objections up, and just to see how you respond to it. May I say objections, some more emotional responses. Like if somebody said, well, I would love to do this, but I can't do it right now because I don't have the money. That's a hard ass one to respond to. Is that an emotional response? Because it would be hard not to go. It'd be hard for you to go, I can understand that. I would feel the same way if I'm in your shoes. I guess you could say, just suppose you had the money, which one would you be moved? So you could walk through it. But what I want you to understand is the walk through the just suppose really doesn't even have to freaking make sense. Okay, now it's hard. The better, it is better if it makes sense, but you can create an objection. Sometimes walking through it. All right. Well, we are done here. So tomorrow, not tomorrow, Wednesday, I think it is. We're going to go through closing the call because there's a science behind closing it, right? Once we get down to where there are only objections, there's no emotional responses, there's steps to close a call. And that's what we're going to go through is how do we close the call? And just remember, closing the call, my definition is you got the sale or you didn't get the sale, but in reality, it's dead. Because there's a lot of people in the sales world, especially I've met over the years that teach you how to make follow-up sales and waste a bunch of time. I'm going to show you. Let's close it in the door so we don't have to worry about following up. All right, I got to get off here. I got another one I got to get on to. Appreciate everybody. When this video gets done, I'll send it to you. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Bye-bye.